All right, welcome everybody to the April 19th, 2023 town board meeting. And I'll start the meeting with the pledge to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. All right, we will start with opportunity to speak to the board, privilege of the floor. I will clarify some questions that came up last time. So if people do have written statements, those should be submitted to the board. They can read them before or after the meeting. There's a 3-minute time limit, as you're all aware, and time may not be transferred to another speaker. And then when I call your name to speak, just stand and speak to the board. Without further ado, I will call on the first speaker. Tonya Van Camp.
Do you want us to stand where we're at?
Right, you can stand there. Yeah, thank you.
All right. First of all, I'd like to thank Mark for addressing the petition at the last meeting. When it was turned in, we were fully aware that some of the conditions of the petition were no longer relevant. We appreciate and acknowledge the time spent on public hearings and listening sessions that the petition had requested. However, what I did not hear addressed was the real heart and meat of the petition, which is that any vote on zoning be deferred until January of next year. It was stated that the over 1,200 signatures were concerning. It is right to be concerned. That number represents over half of the eligible voting population of the town of Caroline. I hope that your discussions regarding zoning do not center on the minutiae of the zoning proposal, but rather on whether or not you will respect the wishes of the constituents who signed the petition to hold off on passing zoning. Next, I would like to address the comments made by Dan Stein at the last meeting. I'd like to think of Caroline as a compassionate community that would support a program that aids in homing the houseless and giving them a new lease on life. So I feel that was a very poor example. However, I feel the point he made actually reinforced the stance that zoning is not necessary rather than promoting it. He described a situation in which the people of Newfield were able to prevent further growth of something that they did not want in their community without having zoning in place. It just strengthens a point that I made very early on in these discussions of zoning, that our community can successfully prevent the things that we might not want to see with ordinances and reviews on a case-by-case basis. We do not need zoning, which will have negative impacts on many landowners, farmers, and small business owners to do that. Lastly, I would like to comment on the seemingly consistent viewpoint that we do not understand what it is we are opposing. If one actually takes the time to review the signatures on the petition, they will find people from broad demographics and diverse backgrounds. Many of the signatures are from people who are well-educated, business owners, farmers, active volunteers in the community, and people who are raising their children and grandchildren here. Many of us have read the proposals and have done extensive research. We are not children to be patronized and mollycoddled. We are people with legitimate concerns that should be acknowledged. We are your constituents. We have been speaking. Are you listening with just your ears, or can you hear us with your hearts?
Thank you, Tonya. Please. So let's see. So the next speaker is what's my sheet? I don't have it. Could I please? I think it's me. There it is. Yeah, John Morris. Yeah.
All right, folks, hello. I just want to do a quick review of the 4-5 town board meeting. It was kind of an impressive night, some horrible, some fantastic, a little bit of all of the above. But basically, privilege of the floor started exactly the way we've left off at all the other big meetings recently. We had 15 very articulate speakers, 100% against zoning, yet again. You know, basically matching what we've seen in those previous meetings where we saw, I estimated about 127 to 14 or 90% against in those big meetings. Arguments of unneeded, taking our freedoms, NIMBYism, selfishly hurting the financially disadvantaged the most to provide comfort for those in power. Some highlights of privilege of the floor I want to touch on. You know, one thing I'll note is that all the clapping and applause has been removed from all the videos. Is that even legal? I don't know. You were reminded by myself that the largest petition in the history of Caroline had recently been submitted. And asking that we wait and hold the vote till after the next election. It didn't even get a formal spot on the agenda. We talked about that. And it's a very simple ask by a huge number of citizens. So I bring that up again. Some other items that happened, RC Quick donated this, he purchased and donated this on behalf of all those who speak here. It is easier, especially when you have papers. It's a nice thing. It was immediately put to use that day. Thank you, RC. We heard from a few new faces that we had never seen before during privilege of the floor. So we're still getting new people coming forward against zoning. And some that hadn't been here in many, many months. We're back again last week. Tanya attempted to read a statement by Megan Bird. Tim Murray immediately took the opportunity to find issue with this. Put pressure on Megan to speak. And her reasons for not speaking are none of your business. If she didn't want to speak, that's up to her. Anybody could have read that statement. Didn't need to belittle her in that meeting. Anyway, Megan did speak. She pointed out that the zoning commission is represented by basically one single demographic and asked for a committee to be formed to study the history of zoning and the impacts of this proposal and how it will affect this town as it has many other towns in the past. Bruce Murray spoke, talked about the issues with the zoning commission staffing and how they were not allowed to replace staff members. Talked about the final stages of the comprehensive plan where the proposal had been put together, and in the week from the final review to the vote, the paragraph stating that we can accomplish our goals without zoning was removed. We don't know by who or how. Chad Tibble spoke with his 18-year-old son here, both of his sons, as part of a school project, one of them. While, if you watch the video, Kate spent time on her phone. Jean McFeeters went on to present the zoning proposal to the board with no surprises, garnering hugs and giddiness from Mark. Then Tim and Mark read prepared statements, basically presenting their arguments why they have no plans to listen to the petition, even though the petition that was half the sides got nothing but praise. Why not have a discussion between you folks in our presence to talk about that? It would be immensely beneficial for us. Then things got really interesting when Dan Klein spoke, county legislator, referring to the second wind cottages in Newfield. Dan said out loud what we've all been saying and so many zoning advocates want and have been denied. Dan said, and I quote, "If you do not want a homeless shelter next to your house, zoning is the way to do that." We've been saying this is all about NIMBYism. Dan's entire statement, if you read the whole thing, is probably the most NIMBY statement I've ever heard a person that's elected official say. It was horrible. This zoning plan is not about health and safety and infrastructure. It's about NIMBY. It's about control. It's about, as Dan stated, what you don't want next to you. Who is you? The guy next to you that's putting in that thing he wants is certainly not you. The guy that's not paying the taxes apparently is who Dan is referring to, not in my backyard. Keep the less privileged out and protect Caroline for the privileged. Catherine Goldberg had the guts to call him out. I don't think he even realized it. But from my understanding, he has helped with the leadership in Danby. It was an immensely restrictive zoning plan. So there's no doubt that he was stating his feelings as he feels them. Catherine, later in the meeting, also asked the board to discuss the purpose of zoning, the rationale, the vision of this town. Something that we've asked for before. Have the discussion in front of the people. Have the discussion with the people would be a great idea. Mark made the comment during this, the discussion doesn't need to be public. We can discuss things by email. That is word for word. I am happy to say that after some deliberation that you folks have added to the agenda today, thank you for doing that. I think that's an important step to have the discussion up front. What are we doing? What have we heard? You know, after the listening sessions, I think we got 7 minutes, if I remember right, of prepared statements with no discussion. I'm just really happy to see that on the agenda. Those are some highlights from last week. It was a pretty interesting day. Thank you.
Bruce Murray.
Got out a couple of different things. I was wondering who was the farming survey sent to, and how was it decided who it was sent to? Because I thought we were talking about all kinds of farming, including trees. I'm a certified tree farmer, number 3964, and I never received anything. The next thing is anyone from the town board going to one of the seminars about the new flood maps and your things? Because I hope so, because it would be nice to know how many people, more people are gonna be affected, how much more it's gonna cost, and as to whether then we should look at the watershed overlays a little bit closer, because possibly we don't need them. And then I hate to beat a dead horse, but I'm gonna bring it up once again. I'll bring it up one more time, that the survey that was touted as being the best survey ever handed into the town of Caroline, and it was proven to be absolutely not a good survey. Better than half of the signatures were not residents of the town of Caroline. I asked the board at that time, after I brought that up and brought all the evidence up, that if they were bringing up at a meeting to the public and explain the mistake, nothing has ever been mentioned, which leads me to believe that this was done purposely, not a mistake. Moratorium is based on this fraudulent petition. And now you have the best petition that has ever been handed into the town of Caroline. And you have yet to give it the recognition that it deserves. Extending the moratorium for the 4th time is totally obscene to me. Town has been very lucky that it's not had a lawsuit brought up against them. Mr. Miller has every right to do so, but has been a respectful resident and not done so. He is only a farmer resident trying to hold on to his land. And the last thing is, I was totally blown away at Dan Fine's statement at that last meeting. I would have expected you, Mark, to say something to him as a county rep. He's not supposed to be bringing up our things, zoning. He's not supposed to be even talking about that. And I would have expected you to have said something to him.
Thank you, Bruce. That's ridiculous. So I just want to clarify that in my statement last week, I did say that we did just get the zoning plan from the zoning commission. And tonight is our first discussion of that. We, as a board, plan to start working on it. In my statement last week, or 2 weeks ago, I said that we will work on it and do our due diligence and take it one step at a time. And we will do that without, regard to the political calendar or whatever. So that was addressed in my statement. So.
Can you clarify what you're just talking about?
I'm talking about the statement in response to the petition that was submitted.
Okay, because.
And the ask that we wait until January 1st or January 1st of 2024.
I think there were 2 petitions that were brought up tonight and then the zoning draft. So I'm just trying to clarify what you're.
That's the one that I'm talking about. I'm talking about my last response to the
Thank
petition. Yeah.
So does that mean it's Your position or the board's position that you will not wait as.
That was my
petition
statement.
asks?
That was my
That's
statement.
your position. your statement.
May I clarify about the recordings?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. I
Yeah.
was going to.
So nothing is edited on the recordings. I record them here at the meeting and they are published as is. The reason why it sometimes sounds that things are edited is the microphone is a noise canceling. So when there's a lot of cheer or anything like that, that's why it sounds that way. But
Thank you. There's definitely a big rumor out there that it's the other.
well, I hope you let
I will.
those know.
I think that's good information to have on record.
And that is one of the reasons that participants on Zoom, citizens on Zoom, often cannot hear what's going on in the room because the chatter in the room cancels the microphone. So it's really important for the citizens who come to our meetings to respect that so that everyone can participate.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I would like to move on to the agenda. And I'll start with my report. I will note that, as Mr. Murray mentioned, we did send out a town announcement today about the FEMA events. They're going to be held on the 26th of April and the 27th. First one's at the high school from 4:30 to 8:30. And the other one is at the Health Department building on 55 Brown Road, same time, 4:30 to 8:30. So this is for people to understand the new flood insurance rate maps, why they matter. And also, I expect to be getting more information on the affected properties and sharing that. So that's coming up next week. I submitted the 2022 annual report to the Tompkins County for our town, to the Tompkins County Climate Protection Initiative. In that report, I highlighted the town's work on zoning planning, our NYSERDA funded community-wide LED bulb distribution, our Brighten Up Caroline program, which was included community-wide LED bulb distribution, the LED streetlight conversion, the recent LED conversion for Slaterville and Brookdale fire departments, and the community geothermal feasibility study that is currently underway for Speedsville, and then the ag and farmland protection plan work that is being done by our ag committee. I am proposing tonight, at the last meeting, I introduced moratorium land use extension for 6 months. I'm amending that to 9 months just to be sure we have enough time to do the work we need to do. The public hearing is still set as we set at the last meeting for May 3rd, our next meeting at 7 p.m. Egg Geothermal, which is the firm that the engineering firm helping us with the study of community geothermal in Speedsville, will be visiting next week on Tuesday for a site visit. Bob Spencer, Bill Guggenheim, and I met with our town engineer, Dondi Harner, at Eckers Road on April 3rd to examine the culvert again and sort of finalize plans to put out an RFP to finish that project. So that's now being developed. Tompkins County Soil and Water and Barton and Lagwittis are developing a plan for the maintenance repairs that I mentioned a few meetings back to do the stream stabilization project at Banks Road. And as I alluded to before in my previous comment on the TICB report, the Slaterville and Brookendale fire departments just got their LED lighting change outs, and that'll be getting finished up, tied up next week. So that's it. And then, oh, I do want to add that we did have our first meeting with Labella Engineering with Bob. That was a constructive meeting, and they'll be providing us a proposal for the first phase of work relatively soon.
On the highway ones.
On the highway marks, yes, thank you. And I will mention one, so I did hear from Tom today. He asked a question about, in their original proposal, they had they were gonna contract with a surveying firm to do the surveying work. They were doing that because their in-house crew was booked, but it looks like that's not true now, so
Right.
he was asking if it would be acceptable if they changed that to have the in-house crew. I don't see any reason not to. That seems like a good
Yeah.
thing,
That
right?
makes
So I told him I would mention it and get back to him.
Great.
So unless anybody has concerns, I will let him know that sounds good. Okay, thank you. So that's my report. Do you have any questions or?
Banks Road funding, will that be a town item or will it be something through soil and water? Do we know?
The funding would be the towns,
Okay.
so. Great, okay, thank you. That's all I got. So with that, I'll move on to the town clerk's report.
Alrighty, I just wanted to mention that tax season is over and we sent out 1,999 tax bills and all parcels, but 92 were paid before my turnover to the county April 1st.
You sent out one short of 2,000 even.
Yes,
Wow.
yep.
So how many more is that this year? I'm not sure, do you know, Rita?
It's around 100. Yeah. So that's record-breaking money.
In your collection
without-
period.
For town collection before it gets submitted to county, so. I thought that was really.
So Jesse, does that mean 100 new lots roughly?
I don't really know, that would be more of a code
Yeah,
question.
Mhm.
I don't know the number of subdivisions.
so it could be
possibly.
subdivisions, right?
Yeah, not necessarily new construction,
But subdivisions, yeah,
yeah.
that's significant.
Yeah, that's all.
So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Cliff's not able to join us tonight. Any committee updates?
Yeah, I can start with ag.
Okay.
And I will address the question about the survey. So I guess I'll just so ag. So we had the event on April 6th. And we will have more information to be shared about that event after the next ag committee meeting, which is May 11th. So I've been in contact with Monica and Erica and have asked for, maybe a summary and just a little more information at the board meeting that follows that next meeting. It didn't feel like there was readiness right now because the ag committee has not yet met following that meeting to look at the survey data. So we'll have more information then. But I wanted to address these surveys because it's been brought to my attention, there's been a little bit of activity about them. And I want to just clarify some things. So the survey is intended to gather information about farming, ag, homesteading, food production activity in the town. It's like the very first preliminary step of getting information to say, for our ag and farmland protection plan that we have obtained a grant to do, to proceed with, to say what are the current conditions that we just know where we're even going, right? And we started testing the survey, and when I say testing, I mean talking about it among the ag committee and, seeing how the questions landed with people? Were there things that were left out? Are there people who felt like they weren't really seen in the survey? We started that process the first week of February. I just confirmed that. So we've been working on it for a while. It's been, you know, in terms of who it was sent to, Bruce, because I think it is an important question. It was not intended to be sent to like every single household, right? That was never the intention. It was trying to capture, like, with the widest net, who do we know for whom this is like a primary concern or activity, and like start there, right? With the people we know who are producing food, we know who are producing fiber, we know who are like, you know, dealing with trees and forestry, right? So to your particular question, I have an email out just as you were speaking to Monica and Erica to ask specifically, you know, we're like, why didn't you get a survey? Because in my view, you would have been on a list, like a targeted list to say you're farming in the town. And we did have those lists, and Cal can, you know, attest to this. I don't really remember, Cal, if you remember, like, where, I actually feel like I saw your name on that list, but
Well, I was just wondering,
So I don't-
I'm not the only tree farm, but I don't know if anybody else got one who is a tree farm.
exactly, right. So I mean, it's a great question. And I would say that, like, if certainly, you know, if there was, you were never intended to be like excluded. So I personally apologize for that if you were. And anyone else who feels like they were excluded, I mean, please, like, contact me, you know, and we will make sure that you're involved. The ways to get involved, though, you know, if you were missed in some way, would be to join the Friends of Caroline Ag listserv, which we now have. And the ways in which this was announced, like, starting in February, was through the, you know, quarterly newsletter, and that did go to every household. So all this was announced of like what's happening with ag. In all the meeting minutes, when we've announced like when the survey is going to be available and how to get it, we can access it online, you can access it by paper. I've received several paper copies myself in my mailbox here. So
Town announcements.
and town announcements. So like, it's been announced, but I do want to clarify that it wasn't, there wasn't a list that was like, oh my gosh, every single person is supposed to have received this, and if I didn't get it, it's some sort of like agricultural conspiracy. Like, I just want to be really like clear, and I'm sorry, and like, we're doing the best we can. So that's the deal with this survey. On that, as much as I'm really excited to have interest in the survey, I will say we've received some feedback on the surveys, which have been helpful and, like, you know, answered the questions which were asked. And then we also received quite a number of surveys which were so helpful, with, you know, scrawl that just said no zoning and all sorts of other, you know, not super awesome messages. So I appreciate that people have feelings, but I just want to like say this publicly, that isn't useful. And I assure you, I mean, I can't say anything but just assure you that by my own commitment to integrity of this process, that the ag committee has like nothing to do with zoning, and has nothing to do with the process of zoning, and has nothing to do with the zoning commission. And like, you know, if the process of like surveying people in this town has somehow been corrupted, like that's a bummer, but like I can't do anything about it. So that's what's happening with ag. And then the final thing that's happened with ag, but has been like a catalyst for other policy, which I think has been helpful, is Facebook. And so the ag committee, in an effort to announce the survey, ironically, actually, I was talking about it, and the April 6th event, formed a Facebook group. And at the time that was kind of being bantered around, I honestly had some feelings about that and maybe some reservations about it, but it's not my jam. I'm just the liaison. So we just had it go forward so that it could like announce this thing. But it then was brought to my attention that the ag committee actually is the only town committee that has a Facebook page, for a variety of reasons, mostly that we don't have the people power to like monitor and respond and like do things with it. As you know, like, organizations that have that kind of media, like, have people to respond and deal with it, and we don't have that. So as a result, we've had some conversation, but I'm hoping that this will be like maybe the final decision with the board, because it's not my decision, but we've wanted to bring this to the board to say, what do we do about Facebook for town committees? And my proposal, for a variety of different reasons, but mostly the people power issue, is that I don't think that we should have Facebook pages as town committees. Like, I just don't know that we can deal with them appropriately. And fortunately, there's really nothing on the ag committee Facebook page right now, other than the announcement of that event. So it's not like any content needs to be like removed, but I just want to, like, I know this is long-winded, but because there's always question about motives, I want to be really clear and transparent about, we had a Facebook page, likely we're not going to have a Facebook page, it will be taken down. And again, it's not some sort of agricultural, like, you know, worry, yeah, so that's my report. So we
Thank
can
you.
add that to the agenda, I guess, of like,
That's great. I think I just, I agree with your suggestion. And we do have a policy on, I thought of this today, that on town announcements. And so, you know, and we've always been very thoughtful about what qualifies for a town announcement. It needs to be a town sanctioned thing, and then event. And the other thing is that, you know, advisory committees of the town are committees that, you know, they are advisory to the town board. They're working for the town board. And so any kind of messaging that goes out would really need to be fully, you know, like agreed upon or whatever. So I think, yeah, so I agree with that
Okay.
suggestion.
Any messaging, so like even just an announcement, or like the survey that went out, that should have been brought before the board first?
well, it was because.
was, yeah.
NDAs,
It was.
and that's
Yeah,
what it
okay.
is.
Okay, so
And
We're
it's-
talking about like, if
It's
you're
the latest
posting on Facebook as like Kate, Kelly, Kenzie, you can say whatever you want, but if you're posting as like, I'm the chair of the planning board. You know, well,
Okay, I
like,
heard
you know,
that.
like we
But yeah.
don't want Bill Podolka to be going on and saying
Right.
like, I, blah, blah,
Right,
blah,
right.
or anyone,
Yeah.
watershed committee, ag, I mean, pick
Yeah.
any of them.
yeah, we don't have the rules set up for the Facebook. Like to make a page and to put the rules and the restrictions and have someone monitor. I agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah, it gets out of control very quickly without those kind of controls,
Right.
so.
And this just in, can I,
You
Monica,
got a reply or something?
yeah, I did. I sorry. I was like, please somebody get back to me right now. Monica Roth writes, thank you, Monica. I used a list provided by the County Assessment Department of properties receiving ag assessment that included both farm owners and landowners that rent to farmers. I'm assuming the list is up to date because you have to apply for ag assessment every year. Committee members did review these lists. This is the list that I was thinking I saw your name on, and crossed out some that they know were not actively engaged in farming or whose assessment had changed. Also, I took out the ag committee member names since we already had their surveys. Oh, also, she says, I did get some names from an extension list, which Graham gave me. That's all the information I have.
Cal, did you have a comment?
But we just totally forgot about the forest owners, and I don't know if we just, as a right at the beginning reminder, change the name to the Ag, Farmland and Forest Protection. Just as, I mean, because it is, I mean, forest owners, they might have a 480A instead of a farm assessment, and it just slipped between the cracks, and I think maybe just renaming the committee, it's like right there, it's a reminder that we're not just talking about farmland, we're talking forest land, because there are several certified tree farms in the township.
Sure.
And they weren't on those lists that we looked at?
No, they were not, and I feel kind of stupid for not, but I didn't,
Okay,
but it's been brought to our attention, and
we will fix it.
yep. Because it's a crop, it's just not an annual harvest.
Sure.
So I just,
Kathy?
And I just wanted, as somebody that went to that meeting, I know Catherine wasn't there. I want to thank everybody from the Ag Committee. It was a very useful meeting. And very insightful, and there was a lot of good discussions, so. I just wanted, because you didn't make the meeting, I wanted you to be with them.
Thank you.
And it was well attended.
Yes, it's great. New faces.
Yeah.
Great.
And I
Thank
think
you
one
for
of
your
the things
report.
that did come out of it too was that just this need for networking, you know, people that want to have a farm enterprise that just, you know, didn't even know who or what to talk to. And it's a lot of new people that are interested in agriculture, some sort of agricultural enterprise, and we got our work cut out. Or maybe not work, but just, you know, just establishing those connections that we used to, maybe we took for granted in the past.
So the Ag Committee will be, they'll be taking, I guess, we have little sticky notes at the end and then, so they'll be combining that and kind of synthesizing it.
We're gonna have more information after the next ag meeting.
Okay.
May 11th.
Just curious, okay. Yeah, it was a good meeting, yeah. Great, thank you. Anyone else?
I guess with broadband, so the Appalachian Regional Council is still going with their broadband boot camp that I've been attending about funding sources and maps. And then the USDA has a broadband technical assistance grants. So I'm gonna talk to Ryan, who's what's Ryan's last name? You know, with Hunt's Engineering.
Ryan Garrison?
Yeah. I was gonna ask him about, we have a meeting with him tomorrow morning. I was gonna ask him about those possibilities for funding. So that's about it.
And Mark and I have been meeting along with Steve Gibeon and Susan Holland about just renovations of the old town hall. Basically getting the grant submission process started, get the funding to help with what needs to be done.
That's right, so, Paul, our to-do is to, get a proposal, an estimate.
Yep.
For the work, so I will, based on our discussion, whittle down what we're thinking of and share it with you all, and maybe we can discuss that at the next meeting.
Yep.
And then go from there to get the cost proposals. Sound good?
Yep.
Great. Great. And anything else? Is that it? Thank you. Okay, so moving on to business. Let's see. So yeah. So I am basically, I'm amending the introduced land use moratorium to be 9 months. So formally doing that, there are copies with the amended language. That would be until February 1st, 2024. Again, it's to make sure that they have enough time and don't feel rushed, but so we'll take it as we go. And so I will now move on to our discussion of the proposed zoning law. And
Just back to the moratorium, and then we'll have a public hearing on it May 1st, at the first May meeting.
first May meeting,
Yeah, I think it's on the May 3rd.
May 3rd.
May
Yeah.
3rd.
May 3rd. Did I say otherwise?
No, he
Okay.
did.
I said
He said May 1st, meaning the first meeting.
First meeting in May, yeah?
Yeah.
At 7 o'clock, yeah. Great, okay, so I think from the discussion last week, we're gonna start with a more general discussion and then go from there. About the purposes of the zoning initiative, is that correct?
That was my understanding.
Is that?
That was my understanding.
Okay, so. And so I will just open that up. I think we have so the Article 1 starts with the purposes statement, and those are derived from the comprehensive plan. The purpose of zoning, to my mind, is the only tool that a town has to direct location and the types of development. So in a thought.
And use. And use.
And use, right. So yeah, I see the purpose as guiding development in a thoughtful way that encourages kind of communities that we want to have as a town. That protects us from sprawl and enables us to accomplish the goals that we articulate in the comprehensive plan. So I think this is, we're all aware of these general goals of that zoning enables a town to do. So those are my, introductory thoughts. And anybody else?
Should the town political body be directing land use? With police power? Or should we just, be taking targeted ordinances? Instead of more general zoning ordinance?
New York state law designates that the town board or the local town government is the entity authorized to implement land use regulations. So this is a state designated responsibility that we have.
Can I restate your question to see if I understand it? You're asking if there are other tools that we should use instead of zoning to accomplish the same goals. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I did not.
In the sense of, something more targeted than the sort of broad.
Okay. So what would be more targeted?
An enhanced site plan review law that is saying, you want to build a significant commercial facility within the town. Here are certain rules for it, rather than saying, well, yes, you can do it here, but not here, but not, maybe there, if you do certain things.
So what can I respond, or
Sure.
for what you just described as zoning? You wouldn't be able to do that without zoning. If you're saying you would be able to do that here, but not here.
Right, I'm asking if the town should be saying you can do that. Should the town be saying you can do it here, but we will permit you to do it here, but we will not permit you to do it there, and we might permit you to do it this
Okay.
other place.
That is zoning.
What you're asking is, should the town do zoning? That's what you're asking.
Yeah.
That's what you're asking.
I'm talking to him.
you
I'm talking to him.
Yeah,
Hey, what? I don't want, look, I want to be able to focus on the conversation at the table.
Well, then focus.
yeah, I just want to, my hesitation is, I just want, there's been statements of just lack of clarity and understanding, and I just want to be sure
Mhm.
that what I'm saying means what I mean, and you're hearing what
Gotcha.
I mean.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to just take as an example, there was something about Dan Klein and his saying want versus not want. Well, we can't do anything about want or not want. We can do permit or not permit.
That's right.
Right, I think we should leave Dan Klein out of this conversation,
I'm sorry.
you know, no.
Yes,
that's not-
you're right.
I just, you know,
I'm
that's
just,
not
you
helpful.
know, I'm just trying to take this thing, you know,
Right.
Right.
that I want to
I
pick my
understand.
words
Right.
carefully.
You're doing great.
Right,
And what's permitted equals what we want, right? I mean, like, we're gonna like parse this out of like what we want, but like, if it's like. Yeah, what do we want? What do we desire? What's the vision? It's like, it's great to have like a vision statement, but when you say sprawl, I mean, if I could just take it back a notch, but in my interrupt you, go ahead.
No, you're not. Go ahead.
Like, what kind of sprawl? Like, this is a question I have. What kind of sprawl? Residential sprawl, commercial sprawl? What is sprawl? I mean, based on the current zoning draft, like on my farm alone, just the part you can see, I could have 8 houses there. That does not, in my view, in any way prevent sprawl. I mean, I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to put houses in my pasture. But somebody could do that. So if I just look at the law as it's written and say, what could happen? And then we go back to what's the vision. If the vision is we're preventing sprawl, I guess I have to ask myself, like, does it serve that vision? And I guess it depends on how we're defining sprawl. What do we not want to sprawl?
I don't want commercial sprawl.
Okay. Like, what can you define? Like, what does that mean to you?
Route 79 becoming a commercial strip.
Okay, well, there's a lot there in terms of location, but
I-
no, it's fair.
That's what I mean. I mean, it's been generally acknowledged that Route 79 is a major thoroughfare. It's also where our prime farmland is. And those two things aren't disconnected because where, you know, you have alluvial bottoms, that's where you have flat land and it's a good place to build roads. So,
Okay.
so I think a worthy goal of zoning is to direct development so that it is to the degree possible nodal, focused, creating, you know, encouraging or facilitating the development of functioning living centers where people can walk and have the amenities they need. And you know, maybe that's utopian, but that's how I look at it.
And what do we mean? I mean, I'm not challenging, I'm truly like, I'm authentically curious, like what do we mean when we say commercial? Like commercial sprawl, what does that mean to us, to you, what does this mean?
well, I mean, I think that's one of the things that we'll have an opportunity to discuss and looking more closely at the proposed law, assuming that we're gonna do that. In the proposed law, there are different categories of commercial. So there's large focused commercial, right? As the law is currently proposed, there's smaller commercial, regulated for everywhere, absolutely everywhere in the town. There are different types of commercial that the law proposes to be focused or concentrated in certain areas as opposed to others. Some of that is related to residential density and use. And I don't know if that's answering your question, but I think that what is commercial becomes differentiated.
But we're
Quite
making the
specifically.
law,
Right.
like we're creating law, so like we decide what commercial means, like I mean.
I'm trying to answer it in terms of what has been presented to us as a result of 2 very, very intense and difficult years of research on part of the zoning commission, which has parsed out very, very carefully what and how is commercial. I mean, I'm answering it in relationship.
No, I
to that
know.
point that we have.
I know that, but I guess I'm not respectfully, like, I'm not asking, I don't really right now care about the draft. I care about what you and you and you, like, I care what we think.
Well, I
How do
care.
we, what do we
That's
think?
what we were trying
I
to
spent
figure out.
2.5 years thinking about this, and so from my thinking is frankly related to the draft. I mean, I spent 2.5 years as the chair of the task force and then as liaison to the zoning commission, listening and thinking and researching about this. So just, I mean, I can understand the desire to have, a huge philosophical conversation, and that has its purposes, but just in terms of my response to the question, is focused. That's just,
So are you ready to vote right now then?
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that you asked what is commercial, and I'm just saying that from my point of view, it would be differentiated, is how it's expressed here. That doesn't mean that there aren't things in the draft that I would like to consider and talk about. That's a different issue. I mean, if I were to talk about the purposes of zoning writ large as it's been articulated, I think of the need to consider areas of use and particular uses. I think of the ability to help preserve land and water, farmland, which I think is very, very important to this document. I think of, in a way, one of the important aspects of potential zoning law is to protect residential citizens from commercial developments that could impact and infringe on their property values, if not their lifestyle. That could then be balanced in terms of the entire kind of ecology of the town. I think of ways of targeting the development of commercial development so that we can encourage it by identifying where it can happen in a very, very robust way with no controversy. One of my favorite examples is one of my old friends opened up a kennel in this town and was harassed for 2 years by the next door neighbor because the dogs were barking. Zoning can prevent that kind of conflict because you can foresee where certain developments are likely to happen or aren't. And businesses can come in anticipating how and where to grow. For me, those are some of the advantages of zoning. The other aspect of zoning is we do have site plan review. It's very, very limited in terms of what can be required. And if the review board tried to insist, for example, on certain design aspects, etc., frankly, that would probably not do well in court, because we've been advised by attorneys and also planning specialists that we need the infrastructure of zoning, the legal infrastructure of zoning, to protect the laws that we already have on the books. So for me, there are just many, many reasons where the purpose of zoning can be positive. Understanding at the same time that the implementation of zoning for the first time, especially in a community that has very, very strong pockets of passionate libertarian thinking, is controversial. And there's certainly going to there will be, and there are, and we know there are passionate opponents who disagree with all of these purposes, absolutely all of them. And I certainly recognize that. My feeling is that we also have a responsibility, the board, to think about protecting the future of the town. We are in a situation right now where any large outside corporation could, for one reason or the other, acquire large amounts of land and position anything that they want to their economic advantage, to our either ecological or social disadvantage, and we would have no recourse to it. Neither would our neighbors. And so that to me is one of the crucial aspects of the need to implement zoning absolutely as quickly as possible. So I don't know if that helps, but that's,
It does, I
That's how I
guess I
see
want, yeah,
things.
it does. Are there examples of, like, I'm trying to just be practical in my own brain, honestly, of like what large outside corporation that has this kind of power that, you know, like that's a legitimate, like, concern. But like, what are we talking about? Do we have
How about
a
some-
type of corporation? Do we
How about
have?
some historical examples?
Sure,
The Ithaca Public School System,
okay,
New York State Division of Youth Corrections. There are two that come to mind.
okay,
Dandy Mart.
okay.
There's another one that comes to mind. Ithaca Public Schools, Caroline Elementary is located on some limited prime farmland in the town of Caroline. McCormick Center for Youth, that's on state land. Would zoning give us any say over what happens on either of those? If the Ithaca Public School System would want to put a junior high school kitty corner from Caroline on that 10-acre flat field, it's kitty corner, you know, does zoning have any say on that?
zoning does not have say over governmental use. It's unclear to me, though,
That's a
what
good
the
question.
standing of the school district has. That's something that actually I don't think has come up. In terms of McCormick, state land is state land, and
Right, it's
any
their-
local zoning wouldn't have any jurisdiction over that.
And that's OCFS anyway,
Right.
I mean,
But so imagine, let's just imagine what might happen. Well, it's hard to say, but let's say that a very large corporation that stores no longer uses tires acquires 150, 200 acres in the town. And
for
simply-
tires,
Let's just say for tires, just that's an example.
To warehouse something, just they need.
It's a dump, it's a
Large
dump,
warehouse.
it's a dump,
Oh, as a dump type thing.
it's a dump, let's just say hypothetically, something like that. Zoning would give us recourse as to how large and where such a thing could or should be located. Zoning could protect our ecological safety in relationship to something abstractly of that kind of magnitude. Zoning can help us protect our water resources in relation to something like that, of that nature.
But what's the likelihood of something like that happening?
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny, I've been talking to quite a few planners. And I was talking to one planner in a neighboring state who said, you guys are incredibly fortunate. She said, at any moment, absolutely any moment, you could be surprised by something that you would just not at all anticipate.
Of course, but
You-
why couldn't just site plan review, if I could go back to the original land use and economic development task force.
Right,
Task force recommends the following actions be taken by the town board. Priority actions. Number one, adopt a revised site plan review law. Ideally as part of a zoning ordinance.
right.
Number two, appoint a zoning commission. I guess what I'm asking is, like this tire facility, if we had a site plan review law that had some teeth put into it, couldn't that control this sort of, exceptional, it seems to me 1 in a million.
So that site plan review without zoning, everything's allowed, and the site plan review mitigates impacts.
Correct.
So it can't require standards, it can't specify, it mitigates environmental harm, it mitigates impacts on the neighborhood, whatever, so.
It can't like set a limit on square footage or something like that.
Nor could it, for example, prevent a gas station or a mega gas station from situating itself directly next to somebody's house.
Well, we had that happen.
Yeah, I
25
mean,
years
Energy
ago.
Mart is.
Right.
Well, it could happen again.
And their house,
Yeah.
they took a house.
Without any planning or any proper designation about where something like that might go. The issue isn't to exclude commercial businesses, the issue is to plan for their placement. Yeah, but that's another, I mean, that's one of my prime examples
Yeah.
that,
But where would you have put that gas station if not where it went? They tore down a house, they tore down an old barn that were in very poor repair. Would you have put it on this prime farmland here?
well, we're talking about not what's here right now, but what might be potentially there.
Yes.
So one of the things that we will have the opportunity to discuss
Well, it's
is
some-
a commercial district.
Right, I mean, there could be some limits on lighting, for example,
Yeah,
such like this, as well as placement. I mean, there are a number of.
yeah, because I know
Thanks.
the neighbors to the gas station, said that the noise and the lighting and was very disruptive.
Yeah.
And,
But with site plan, the difficulty with site plan. I like site plan, but the difficulty with site plan is you cannot require design standards under site plan.
And what kind of
They don't have
design?
they don't have standings, so you could not require the gas station to have in that location, on that site, this, that use. Zoning permits you to do that.
So I'm hearing design standards are of value.
I think they're valued, that's always open to debate.
Well, yeah, I'm asking, I like that. I mean, like, so I'm asking, like,
But design standards could be within site plan review,
The designs,
But- but they just couldn't.
design recommendations can be within site plan
Yeah.
review. Which is different from standards. So in other words, design recommendations, but not design requirements.
Yeah. But so back to my history thing, so the town would not be required to abide by its own zoning standards when it's built, if it builds a new highway facility.
Correct. That's state law, correct. That is the irony and the paradox, absolutely.
I love that.
although we could
Things
be
we
an
don't-
example and try to comply with our own
Yes.
law. I mean, I would recommend that.
Which is one of the reasons that we chose the current highway site for development.
Exactly, yeah.
One of the reasons we chose the current highway site for development, because we thought that was in keeping with the comprehensive plan and the direction of comprehensive.
Great, yeah, 100% agree with that. I mean, I guess I'll just say that for me, the purpose of this, like, let's have a discussion was not to like necessarily debate the merits of zoning, but to just kind of get an idea of like where we are all starting as a board. Because I think that's realistic and that's important, and like, I've already expressed this over email and I'm being transparent about it publicly. I mean, I've already stated where I am, which is very far, like it's nowhere close for me. And
I don't know what that means. I'm sorry.
it
It's
means
nowhere
that
close
I'm
to-
nowhere close to a yes on this. Like, it's not even close. And so for me, right? And that's okay. I think we all need to be transparent about like, where are we starting? Because the fact is, if like, there's a lot going on in the town, aside from zoning too, like there's a lot that needs to happen. And so I don't think that like I need to personally like gum up the works by like going through my like 80 pages of notes on this thing. I'm just being realistic. So like, I need to know, I think it's fair for us all to know, like, how much of an appetite does this board really have to like dive into this thing so that we could just spare us all the like, the zoning commission has done an incredible job. They've like done all the work, like everyone's done a
So.
seriously commendable job, but
They
I,
put in a lot of. effort.
they put in a lot of effort, and I'm not like looking to undo it, but I mean, I think that we have to just. That was my question over email, and I'm asking it again, like, how close are we? Where are we?
Okay. I didn't quite understand that
I didn't either, I'm sorry.
question. So. I don't necessarily want to go first. I'm happy to say where I am. But I mean, I think the particulars matter, and so. If we go through each section, like, I'm fine with the purposes, I'm fine with the definitions. And then, you know, I guess I have things to discuss, about the meat and potatoes sections, which, you know, but not, you know, like, I don't want to reinvent the wheel, but I have some questions, about the districts, and I would like to, my expectation was that we would go or that we would discuss as a board, the uses table, uses and dimensions, and see how, because that's where the meat and potatoes is, and how comfortable, and you know, that addresses your question about, you know, like, what kind of commercial are you talking about? And so that's where we as a town set a definition on those kinds of things. So so that's where I am. You know, I think the site plan law section article, I think that would be wise for us to also discuss as a board and review that. That has not been reviewed by the board. It was created by the task force. And so it'd be nice for us to go through that and think about comments we've had. So.
Yeah, just a footnote to that, just so we all recognize this publicly. Our current site plan law, one of the reasons that this document is lengthy is that the site plan law was revised and reinserted into the zoning law to give it the proper envelope. So we do need to look at that for sure.
Is there any interest or willingness to think about pulling that out?
Legally, I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, it provides, the zoning law provides the site plan with its legal authority. And we can go back to our attorney again, but this has been recommended to us through the task force, that that's the wise thing to do. But we can certainly, in fact, we'll hear his opinion about that, I'm sure.
We could discuss it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Certainly.
So that's a no, unless, I mean, you're not wanting to pull it out.
I'm in favor of keeping it in, but I'm open to discussion, is what I'm saying. Definitely.
And I guess I would say, based upon what I've learned in the past 2.5 years, I would be highly inclined to leave it in. I would recommend leaving it in. I can also say, I mean, there's some other aspects. I mean, I think Mark's right, that the use table is something that, you know, it will just be helpful for us to walk through as a board. We're clearly going to want to consider and discuss the water overlay, because it's been a public issue, and we're going to want to understand it ourselves. We may or may not have opinions about changing it, but we need to look at that very, very closely. I think that those are the main areas that I would have anticipated paying attention to. I think that there's the last section on enforcement and administration. Most of that is state boilerplate, but we're certainly going to want to look at it. You know, and there might be some things that we can tweak. For example, I think that I believe we have the authority to set pricing and that sort of thing. But we should look at that.
So it's water resource overlay, use table, and enforcement.
I think Mark also mentioned, you know, the actual boundaries and things. I would like to, when we're
Maps.
discussing this, I would like to have a better understanding, you know, of the law and of the meat and potatoes issues. I am, I know, been open about this. I support responsible zoning. Where I lived for a long time, there were farms out my windows and it is complete sprawl right now, and it's commercial and, 20-lane highway. I know I'm not in Maryland, but I've seen it happen. I saw it happen to a really rural area in southern Maryland. And it worries me, and I would like to try to make sure something like that doesn't happen. Or I see it when I go to Bath, New York. Driving out of the village and suddenly you hit parking lots, empty parking lots, and shopping malls falling in. I would hate to see that here. And Tompkins County is growing. And so that is my concern.
What are you basing Tompkins County is growing on?
Looking at Ithaca, I'm looking at how it's building up and out. It's one of the few areas of the of Western New York that's growing right now.
But in what way? If I look at Cornell's lab of demographic analysis, applied demographic analysis, it has the population flat
People
for
aren't
the
living,
next.
people aren't living in big family houses anymore.
Yeah,
People
but
are
I
living
guess
one or
like the
two
growth,
people.
is it population, is it buildings, is it,
Hmm.
but
Okay,
people build, we're talking about residential housing, or maybe all the building you see in Ithaca is maybe people are moving back to the urban centers, and this concern about people moving out and buying up all the farmland and building houses in the town of Caroline is misplaced.
well,
We just had 100 new tax bills in 1 year.
That was not
Statistically,
building,
that's meaningless.
and I would offer curiosity around that as a response, in fact, to all of this, because it's like, I divide your, whatever the parcel is when this starts is the parcel.
Well, I
So
didn't, mean to-
I would say that is why that's happening.
but I didn't mean to, excuse me, I mean, that was my fast beat. What I meant to say is that that is one indication that there is a lot of activity in this town, and
That's true.
another are the number of building permits that have been issued this year,
That's true.
which are much higher. We know that all we have to do is look at our neighboring towns and see what kind of development has been happening there and how it has been organized. I would hope, and this might just be a pipe dream, I think it's a pipe dream on everybody in this room, that we could maintain the relative rural character, whatever that means,
Well.
of Caroline, realizing that we are on the cusp of at least significant residential development, if not commercial development. And I don't think that that's a ridiculous statement.
I don't, however, I see nothing in this zoning law that does anything to, like, the thing that is permissible anywhere anybody wants, is a single family house. So honestly, the only way I can even conceive of being on board with this, which I still can't, but is to say that like the same restrictions are gonna apply to a single family home that apply to everybody else. I mean, that is the only way to make this,
What restrictions will those be?
any design restrictions, any like, I don't wanna go too far afield. Single family homes can be built without any regard for siting, design, and the like, I'll just say, right? So I agree with you, Tim. I mean, I agree with you, right? We drive around like there's a ton of single family homes. And so I guess this is, look, we all live here. We love living here. I want people to love living here. I'm not saying like people should stay out, but I think we should be like really specific and really clear about, this is why I asked, what do we consider sprawl? In the way I live, consider sprawl to be like, there are now a bunch of homes in like hayfields. To me, that's sprawl. If you put concentrated commercial development on Route 79, which in my view is exactly where it belongs, if we are to have it, that's a question. Do we want it? We could say as a board, we don't want it anywhere. And then we're deciding that we're gonna stick to our you know, decisions and values and say like, we in this town of Caroline don't want commercial development anywhere. We don't want it here. If we decide that, then we can say that. But that's not what people are saying. People are saying, we do want it here. We just don't want it on Route 79, which is just like baffling, but we're not gonna go there.
Parts of Route 79, parts.
I mean, look, let's just be, call it what it is, right? I mean, it's like. There's so many topics that I just want to be focused with my thoughts. I'm just bringing up the sprawl issue because I agree with you, Tim, that like we're seeing residential development. And nothing in this proposed zoning law is going to restrict that, limit it, or stop it.
Well, I'm not sure I would completely agree with you, Catherine. There are proposals in this law that would shape it. It would shape,
It's a good word.
especially shape large development in terms of focal development with leaving open space. So there is that. There are siting and lot percentage aspects in this law specific to certain areas and residential zones that are there that do help shape that. There are differentiations in this proposed law. Let's take Route 79. There are differentiations in this proposed law regarding residential development, notable residential development, focused residential development, commercial development, light commercial development, along different sections of Route 79, all of which can be revisited, right? And another thing that this proposed law does is it promotes and home businesses throughout the town, differentiated between small and large. So there's a lot of very, very fine delineations in this law that I do think addresses a lot of your concerns. One of the things that the zoning commission was very sensitive to, I think Bruce would agree with me, was the need to keep hands off residential design. There was a sense that that was not what the town would want. It's not characteristic of the town that we would try to regulate that. And the only commercial design standards really that are now in this law pertain to signage, some exterior aesthetics, not very much, but some road facing aesthetics and lighting.
Design is regulated for multifamily. I was at the meeting when it was discussed potentially removing.
Yes, not
And it was,
size, it's size, it's not design. I'd have to look at that again.
it was a very interesting, honestly, like the meeting about, it was one of the very last ones. And there was this discussion of, because that's when they moved, you could have, 8 dwellings, it's like whether 8 dwellings or 4 dwellings, dwelling units and changing those definitions
Right.
so that we could say, you can have, trying to have some parity with single family and multifamily, which of course I commend that effort, right? But the sticking point was the design standards. Because there was a motion put forward to say, shall we make everything equal and get rid of them? It was like whether it was ASPR and whether there was any review process aside from code. Anyway, we don't need to get into details, but I recall very clearly because I was like, oh, they're gonna take them away, that's great, and they didn't, it got voted down.
That's something that we can consider.
Right, that's what I
Right, so-
suggested we look at
Well,
the site plan review.
That's why we have this.
great,
Or I can say something just to help a little bit.
Okay,
I think what helped me when we were starting all this stuff was whether you're for or against it, the purposes are the purposes. That's what they are.
Mhm.
everybody should be on board and everybody should know that, so maybe you should discuss them. But the other thing was, I would think what helped us and stopped us from doing what you're doing right now is section to section. Discuss this instead of theory, okay, I feel, and it just went faster when we started doing that.
Well, sure, we will, but we need to have
Right, okay.
an open discussion.
I
I mean, one
understand.
of the things that I do think will be helpful for us, especially in relation to some of these specific questions you have, Catherine, is for us to ask Nan to come and meet with us if we have questions about legal parameters, definitions. some of these
Or we can follow up with her
delineations, Or
later.
can follow up with her.
So,
I'm happy to do any of it. I'm just saying, like, I personally have 2 single space pages of notes on the definitions section alone. I'm just giving you an example. So it doesn't matter. I'm just one person, but I'm just sharing that as like, if there's not like an appetite for this, because you think they're fine and you think they're fine, and we have enough people who think they're fine. Like,
You mean the definitions of the,
so I
just
would,
as an example, like, we need to be, let's come up with a list. We have a list now of 5 things. We can start there.
That's what I recommend.
I would add the
Totally.
commercial district on 79. I would also add this hamlets and the relative sizes of all the hamlets and Beesimer and all these other things, like,
say that again, are you proposing this? Can you just repeat
we
that?
currently have a list of the top
Right.
5. We have water resource overlay, use table, but like the use table to me is like,
Yeah,
that's a pretty big,
thing to do.
that's like the whole, it's okay.
There's a
The
lot.
use table, enforcement, the maps, defining growth, which we just kind of already did. I guess. Cal, do you feel like the definition of growth and what's growing has been clarified or
Not at all.
not? At all? Okay, define growth. And then we have Route 79. Commercial question mark, right? And interference with farmland potentially.
Well, I mean, I would like to point out that the zoning commission did spend 2 years considering much of this very carefully. So I'm personally not inclined to start from scratch.
right?
I want to know what the questions are, so. So I think.
I want to go through with everybody to get other people's insights and concerns.
Mhm.
I do not want to rework everything that the zoning commission has done. And I don't have I'm not a planner, I'm not a lawyer, I don't have the expertise to debate every term, I guess. I'm like, okay, if this is the definition, how would it be applied? Does it make sense? And kind of move on and not
Mhm.
argue every. But I do want other people's on the town board's insight into the law. I mean, I want to know
Yeah,
thoughts and concerns.
I mean, I would, if, for example, take the definitions. Catherine, if you have specific notes to the definitions, I'm happy to look at them and consider them. And then if there's some that we all think might need attention, sure, why not?
Mhm.
So I'm happy to read everyone's notes about details in this draft that they have concerns about. I don't want us to get bogged down rewriting every detail of this law if much of it is sufficient. You hear what I'm saying? Probably not.
I do, no, I hear you exactly. That's why I started this by asking like, where are we all? How close are we? That's the most important question.
yeah, but I think we have to start at sort of whatever the lowest common denominator, and
So
kind
I
of,
will let you
Find
guys start then. I mean,
so.
you guys
For
can-
me, it's just too big of a step all at once in one law. Personal property rights is a huge issue for me. And to start for me personally, and for the town as a whole and other significant landowners to just say, here are rights that you currently have, and I feel you're subtracting quite a bit from that bundle of rights that the landowners currently have. Just to sell, to put in, to do some sort of development, or if what right now comes with that bundle of rights of owning a piece of property. That, you know, I would be much more open to something if it was, maybe just within the hamlet of Brooktondale. You start out with something and then build on it, but to me, this is just too much all at once.
I don't think legally we can just zone one part of the town, it has to be the whole town, doesn't it?
No. 30 years ago, Lansing was able to do just a portion of it. It requires something from the state legislature, but you know, it's just like, you know,
I thought Lansing made the village and then everything else, so it was 2 zones. It was still 1 zone and another zone.
But you could have one zone that doesn't have any like restrictions in it.
yeah,
Right, but it was still zoned.
Sure.
that could be. But it was just that they were able to just start with zoning in a portion, maybe it was the village, or maybe it was the southern half of, they were able to zone a portion of the town. I would like to see something like that, and then I am disturbed by the size of the hamlet of Beesmer. I don't fathom why that was extended from the town, made from the town line to Snyder Hill Road. I mean, to me, it should be kind of the intersection of 79 and Beesmer Road, and as far as you can throw a rock.
I share that question, I guess. Yeah.
I think if we reviewed the density of housing in that entire district, there would be an explanation for that.
To me, it seems abstract and ambiguous.
It's not abstract, I would be happy to take you on a tour.
Yeah.
But are we talking about that now, or that's on the list for like, we're gonna dig
I don't
into
think we're
these?
talking about it now. It's 8:37.
Okay, but that's on the, I mean, I think
So-
the size of
Well,
these.
all of these things are on the list, and that's why we have to go through it and have lots of discussions on this, right?
And I drive 79 quite a bit, and I don't know how many times I've counted the number of houses, and what I remember is, here's something that's built in the last 20 years, and here's something that is always been there as long as I can remember.
Well, we can,
Yeah,
I'm quite happy to do it. I think what we're going to have to do is have a number of working sessions. We're not going to be able to accomplish anything in 1 hour bits and pieces.
Yeah.
So I think within the next few weeks, I would recommend that we have a 2 to 3 hour working session.
A 2-hour working session separate before May 3rd. Is that what?
Well, I don't know if we can manage
like a
to
week.
before May 3rd, but soon, within, relatively soon.
I'm just trying to understand what
Oh,
you're
you mean for
suggesting.
the next meeting?
Yeah, oh, no, not before the next, I just don't think we'll have time to plan it.
if I may, I still keep wanting to go back to the beginning with the land use and economic development task force. The additional actions will prepare an economic inventory for the town of Caroline that would guide economic impacts, reviews and assessment. I don't recall if that's been done.
No.
And adopt a town specific scenic resources inventory and consider a town environmental quality review act. And this was a good comprehensive study, and I just feel this whole thing, we need to go back and start at the beginning. And I really feel that this sort of economic inventory, because this town needs, to my mind, needs some economic development more than it needs land use development guidelines. In my
The,
mind,
can I explain the economic inventory recommendation? One of the task force was charged with considering land use and economic development. One of the tools recommended by the revised comprehensive plan, now I'm losing the specific term, was economic impact, an economic impact tool. The task force discussed that possibility. The context with that, let's say, new national business were to move into town. Some towns then require an economic impact study for these kinds of businesses to see what the impact of their business would have, not only on the town government, but also on other local businesses.
Yeah.
In order to do that, you first have to have an economic inventory of the town. The task force, as my memory recalls, in the first place, didn't feel that there was an appetite in the town for economic impact studies. But in order to do that, we would have to do that review. So that's the context of,
okay, thank
that's
you.
the context of that.
So,
Well, shall we sum that, I mean,
when would you like to have a working session? Is that,
yeah, I was
What
wondering
we're
if we
asking.
wanted to sum this up, or,
I think we need to make a plan.
I mean, I could do a working session either the 22nd or the 29th. If we do one on Saturday, we'd almost have to do one on the weekend, right? Or at night. That's another question. Do we want to do this at night? Or on the weekend?
I think it's difficult for people in the day. Am I correct?
The working day, sure.
yeah.
Yeah. That's not possible.
So we're proposing, I mean, how much of an agenda do we have for May 3rd? Like, can we do as much of this as possible
I
at like
think we
meetings
could-
we already have?
We could have, I think. Right now, we haven't set the agenda, so we don't have one, so we.
I mean, I guess I would just propose like using, like, yes, there's other stuff, but this
I
is
think-
also like primo, so let's just,
It's primo, but there's no hurry.
I agree. But I think that. To have, I mean, I'm just speaking for someone who like, you know. Has a like full-time other thing, like everyone has other things, and I'm not averse to having multiple meetings, but I think we need to use the meetings we have.
I totally agree. I
Yeah.
thought I heard that people wanted a meeting sooner than that, but I didn't know. I was trying to understand.
No, and I thought, I was suggesting that at least at some point, we're gonna need more than an hour at a time
Yeah,
to make progress on this.
no, I agree.
But if you can I make a proposal?
Yeah.
Next meeting,
Should,
we discuss the water resources overlays as a starting point.
okay,
At the May 3rd board meeting,
At the May 3rd board meeting.
Okay.
Water resources overlay.
perfect.
Does that make sense as a starting point?
And just, they are 100% of the town.
it's as proposed in the,
It's proposed in all of the
Yes.
water resources overlay, all the 100% of the identified water overlays in the whole town.
Yes.
It's not like we're saying we want to protect 30%.
Well, I'm proposing that we consider,
What's in the
we
law?
study
what's in the law?
proposal made by the zoning commission.
Yeah,
That's my starting point for all of these.
okay, which is good timing because all the FEMA stuff is before that, right?
Yeah.
It's on the
It is
26th.
before that, that's just the FEMA floodplain, which is
Right,
for the flood insurance rate maps, so that's,
but it's relevant, I mean, it's all.
it's relevant, it's part of it.
Okay, so next meeting, we'll talk about the water resources overlay. And that's the task.
And then maybe if I could recommend, maybe. Think of other topics or points that would be the next item to be discussed or questions on a certain section or
Well, I mean, I think. we
just
would
to
go-
try to keep things
I would
structured.
think we would go from the water overlay to the use table would be my thinking.
Your thinking is what, that,
Use table.
Use table.
no, the use table.
Yeah.
Okay, I was
Yeah, that's-
gonna be more numerical and suggest the definitions.
Well, I guess it just depends on whether we need to spend a lot of time with the definition.
We believe that.
Start with page 1. That's my
I don't
opinion.
think we should go through, I mean, I think we should go to the study the pressure points.
Well, it's hard to know what pressure points are when we really haven't had like a transparent, like conversation about what our biggest fears are. I mean, I hear that you're concerned about a tire, a dump and tires, like I hear that. I hear that you're concerned about sprawl, commercial sprawl. Cal's concerned about property rights.
I'm concerned,
Like-
concerned about water quality,
Okay,
protecting our aquifer and protecting the water resources that we have
Right.
flowing into Caroline and out of Caroline, even into the city of Ithaca water supply,
So,
which impacts all of us.
great. I mean, I think it's that's why starting with water is totally reasonable. Because we can all just lean into that, but I'm just saying that the use table, it's like, I still don't. Well, anyway, this is what happens, because now this is like our meeting, so I don't want to go all over the place, but like the water resources, we don't even know. It is not clear to me, I'll speak for myself. What is the concern? Is it like the building footprint? Is it like a roof pitch that there's water running off and then there's an erosion issue? Is it like, I do not have a sense of like we're protecting things in the water resources overlay, but like, what kind of structure are we talking about? Like, that's not delineated in this law. Like, do you know what I'm saying? You don't know what I'm
Actually,
saying.
some of it is with the water overlay, that part of it is to clarify where you can build and how
Yes, but-
close you are. I mean, so
Sorry.
part of it is, I mean, in hydrology and non-point source pollution, right? And runoff and things like that, all have to do with a lot of things in here, including parking lots, impermeable surfaces. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm aquifer use, there's so many things there. So I think that once we start working with some of this, this is an attempt to try to protect that. And it's not going to be, none of the laws trying to protect water are perfect. Right, but it's what we're trying to do, and I think when we get into discussion of this, we'll get back into the details on it. And we'll all have more informed understanding of it.
so we'll start with as Tim suggested, that one, great. And then do we want to go to the uses table?
If time remains, then I
Okay.
recommend we move to the use table.
Okay,
I'd also like to recommend that as we work through these sections, which is how the zoning commission managed to move forward, that we make decisions accordingly. So we don't have these long discussions and then come back to them 3 months later and revisit them, but so that if there are proposals, we make the proposals.
Agree,
We take a vote on the proposal and move on.
agree.
good. Very good, okay. Sounds like a plan. Great, shall we close the discussion of tonight's zoning discussion? Move order, sure. That was the main item on our agenda anyway, but don't have any transfers. I will offer resolution to pay the town bills in the amount of $20,639.38 for A fund, $37,168.11 for DA fund, and $229.32 for the streetlight fund.
Seconded.
Seconded by Cal.
I have a question about vouchers. When do I ask that, now or after we
Sure.
vote?
Yeah,
Do we have some sort of policy on, like, travel expenditures or hotel
Yes,
expenditures or?
I sent it to you all, right?
You did?
I did. I sent it about
A month ago, maybe.
a
Yeah,
month ago.
Oh,
So
well,
we do,
sorry,
and so
related
the-
to a recent.
The policy is, it's per diem. And it's specified by the GSA, Government Services
Right.
Administration,
so
so,
it depends where you are.
and yeah, and so you can go to the link and then
It's a
go to
certain-
wherever you are and they price it. So I did, explain that to everyone. So that is,
And I know that like when we went to New York, we were trying to go way under that, right, and not like
Yeah.
max it out at all, especially.
And it's not always, it's not always possible. There could
Yeah,
be a
it's not.
situation where somebody couldn't get lodging and lodging that they were able to get is.
Right, no,
higher, and they
exactly.
Try to max that out,
Yeah,
try to balance it out.
Yeah, which is what just happened in the case
Right.
you're referring to, is that there was the only. But everything else was, the lower cost ones were all booked up.
The Albany
And-
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and if you go to resident, if you go to the inn where they stayed, that's their advertised rate today, and they couldn't book it until the last minute because they weren't sure if they were gonna go, because you might get a winter storm coming, and then they better stay here and not go to a meeting. So I saw your note, and
I was just wondering.
I asked them directly, there was 2 nights. And, the other places were, and the other places were booked full because there was this big conference. And
Okay.
the last minute thing. Or not sort of real last
Yeah.
minute, but anyway,
last
Okay.
minute hurts.
yeah.
So,
The
So-
cheaper places got filled up first.
Okay, I mean, I assumed.
Yeah.
so that policy's in the personnel handbook.
I just found it, thank you. Okay,
Jesse?
No, go ahead. If
Okay.
you're gonna finish this one and then.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions before we? All in favor of paying the town bills?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, okay,
I'm
thank you.
sorry, who was the second?
Uh,
Thank you. And you said there's no transfer?
no transfers. Sorry, I meant to take those off, yeah.
Okay.
And let's see, so approval of the minutes of March 15th. And there was a March 21st special meeting on the highway project, also put that one forward. And then we also have the minutes of April 5th, so.
and there were a couple of adjustments on that, which Bill had made and.
Yeah, and I don't know if people have more questions to discuss or to clarifications, and even if you do, you can still. The minutes are the minutes, and they're not passed by resolution or anything, but it's just so. Okay, great. Thank you, then those minutes are hereby approved, so thank you.
Jesse and Velvet.
And Jesse and Velvet, yeah. So I did send you a couple of things that I wanted to mention. The highway things. I sent you the truck quotes
Yeah.
from
Did-
Bob, so I
Did
don't
we
know.
get a response to my question about how much we're gonna
Did
get?
you get a response?
No, did I?
from me?
Well, it's hard. The last truck we sold, we got 90% of what we paid for it. Which doesn't answer your question.
Okay,
We have no idea what.
There's no way we're gonna get that. Right,
We're not gonna get probably 90% of what we paid for it, but the other one, the current 1 ton is out of warranty.
great,
And it's got some issues.
great. I mean, I know it's part of the plan, it's like fine, but it's how we know.
Yeah, and the dollar amounts for a 1 ton truck are just flabbergasting.
Yeah,
for just 1 ton.
For just a 1 ton truck, but, and But then, if you order one, then the price is what, 13,000 more.
Right.
So Bob's never dealt with this dealership before. It's in New Jersey, it's on the lot.
So how do we choose these candidates for our fleet?
The dealerships.
Oh, you mean the dealerships?
Yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah,
how,
so
it's like,
these-
it's in New
these-
Jersey, it's on the lot, like, how does this?
So it's a good question. So, but this is an RFP, but these are proposals from
Right.
dealers. One of them is listed on there. It's on the Onondaga County state bid.
Right,
So that is good if we know it's on state bid.
Well, it's always, in fact, it's a requirement for us. It's a requirement for us.
Right. Well, if we,
that's the
Unless we do our-
97,000.
Unless we do our own bids.
Yeah.
or we could get multiple bids if,
Okay.
but, so.
I guess I'm asking, is there any justification for the more expensive vehicle? Like, what's the justification?
I mean, I think it would be good to discuss it with the highway superintendent. So maybe we should do that.
Wait a second, the more expensive vehicle, one is on a lot, the other would be ordered.
Right, but,
To specification,
right,
diesel engine versus gas,
Okay,
plow, and just certain, heavier suspension.
okay.
Trying to keep things in warranty. You mentioned one previous meeting about what about going electric? As soon as you put a plow on an electric truck, that invalidates the warranty.
yeah, no, we can't do that yet, but,
Not yet,
yeah, not yet.
but, so, there's just, well, here's one for a price, and if you want to go with it, fine.
So just so I understand, as you understand it, Cal.
Thank you.
Because I wish we could have had this conversation 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
When we asked Bobby if there were other things that he wanted to talk about. He said no. So
He
I've
probably,
been asking him for 2 years to do this in advance, so we haven't had time to consider it. And some
I just feel like it pops up all the time and all of a sudden we're like buying these, I just
But
don't.
from what you understand, I just want, and you might not have the full picture. So is the situation that this particular truck just happened to surface? And that's the only truck available, or are there other options?
That's my
currently
question.
available?
About candidates, like, where are these?
yeah, I mean, I don't think this is like super time sensitive, or do you know?
I don't know what, that's a question for Bob. I think, there's just this kind of general services. You can go online and, I need a 1 ton,
Yeah.
diesel, and this is, it's like a Google hit, this is the one that comes to the floats to the
But
top.
I can't imagine, for example, that we would ask for an $1,800 Chrome setup.
Yeah, we wouldn't ask for it, but that's on this truck that.
Maybe that's what it comes with.
Asking.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
So what I'm asking is if there are other trucks on other lots as well. I'm just trying to
I think we
find
need to
out.
talk to Bob about, I mean, this,
Yeah.
but this,
what heavy duty 1 ton trucks are hard to find. There's,
But you hear what the question that I'm asking, it's just an open question.
yeah,
I'm certainly not challenging the need for the truck.
I didn't take it that way.
Yeah,
So, which-
Was Bob asking us, I mean, we didn't get a proposal. Did we
What's
get
that?
a specific proposal from Bob asking us to vote on something tonight?
no, I mean, we got
That's what I
the,
don't
we got the
understand.
slip, we said like this, these are the two trucks,
the
one was
information.
97,000, one was
We got
almost
it 2 hours,
110,000.
2 hours ago.
yeah, here's a truck that needs to be replaced, and here's a ballpark it's gonna cost you.
Yeah.
So we can discuss this next meeting. then.
Yeah.
I think that would be
I
good.
think that'd be.
Bob's here.
Yeah, and the question I posed was, what will we get in return for the truck that we are
Right,
selling
right,
to give
right.
us an idea of like, actually, how much money are we
Right.
spending? Because without that information, we don't
Yeah, yeah.
actually know.
It's the boot.
I think when Bob gave me those, he thought it was 30,000, yeah, not just 30.
So, let's do.
So that's,
but it might be different, I don't
but
know.
it's quite a bit to boot, but he did
So it's a
say.
chunk of change. I mean, this is not like, we're not trading trucks here, like,
No,
to be
but-
clear, right?
but-
Like, this is
Like
how
on
it's
the-
built, but this is
on
not
the-
what we're doing.
Yeah, like on the other one, I mean, we only had, we paid 46, we got 42 for it.
But I mean, let's remember that he does have an equipment budget.
Right,
And what we just try to help him do regularly is plan accordingly within that budget. So my concern is that we're not
Budget.
adding on a 1 ton in addition to a snowplow that he's gonna want us to get next week.
Yeah.
You know, so just so we can understand the
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we have the installment payment. That's 50, and so,
So yeah, so hopefully we can get all this cleared up next week and.
and he'll be there at May 3rd, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we can put it
I,
in.
yeah, that'd be good, so, okay, I'll let him know.
Move forward with this, yeah.
And then the other, yeah, so,
The one might be gone, but then something else might pop up. Better.
oh, yeah. So. Then I mentioned the meeting we had with Labella, which I thought was really good, and so, you know. We should think about how we want to move forward as far as, you know. A subcommittee or group to. Be the cog with them. I think we had been thinking like me, Bob and Cal or something like that.
I mean, I was so impressed with those guys that I think that where we are right now is smaller subcommittee, just as an informational conduit is gonna work fine because, you know, heavy details are gonna wait a while, depending upon what price point we end up going with.
They were great. I mean, I would.
They're
let
just
them
gonna
do it.
they're gonna lay all that stuff out for
It
us
was
so
a good meeting.
clearly.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a lot of confidence once we had that meeting.
Did it end up with, did we have any to-do things before the next meeting? Because I had to sign out early.
No.
Yeah.
It's on them, so they're gonna get us back
Okay,
a
Yeah,
proposal. So. We did our to-do, we authorized them
Okay.
to do the
Did we do
survey.
the to-do about the floodplain?
Yeah, that was.
they're doing.
Oh, yeah, which I don't really understand because
I had,
that's
I
in
thought
their
they were going
ballpark.
to look into
Yeah.
that.
So, I
because
mean, I'll
they were
follow up with
thinking they
Tom and
might be
say,
able to get more funding if it was a floodplain or something like that.
yes,
Well, they wanted to review the floodplain, but that's what's happening
but,
nationally, you know.
and I,
okay.
Right.
And then is Bob having a meeting with them? I mean, my notes from that meeting were the asks from Labella were the fleet, the years, the type, what future equipment will be added, all this stuff, right? Type of lifts.
that's
How many
right,
maintenance bays,
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
lifts, pick for oil changes, yes or no, drive in, back out, or drive through, and
Yeah.
then clarify floodplain question.
And those are preferences, so a lot of that's then gonna depend upon budget.
Sure,
So,
but
you
yeah,
know, we want the wish list for sure, they want the wish list, and then what I'm anticipating they're gonna do is then present us
Mhm.
with 3 rough price points according to the wish list, you know? And they'll say, I get the impression they're gonna say 16 bays is gonna run you roughly this. Go down to 8 bays, 6 bays, and this would be your price points. And then we can make decisions, and then they'll get into the nitty gritty, which will be time consuming.
right.
no,
But boy, they seem like they're gonna do most of the heavy lifting.
No, they were great.
Did they give us a similar building to township to maybe go look at?
oh, well, I talked to Bob about that, so, I would like to go visit a couple of them. So.
So if you talk to Tom, if he could just give us a couple within drive.
Yeah,
Drive
road
range.
trip. here.
Yeah,
For myself, it would just be, oh, I got some time today. you know.
yeah,
They kept talking about sodas, right?
so this is only like an hour away,
That's more than
we could go there.
Sodas,
Sodas?
So this is like an hour and a half,
Hour and a half.
that was the one they.
it's
kept
about an
talking
hour and a
about.
half.
That's-
Anyway, I would really like to do that, but. So,
But just to clarify the to-dos, like it seemed
Yeah.
like the next step, I mean, maybe something else happened that I'm not aware of, and that's fine, but like that they Lavello wanted Bob, because remember we did some of the
Yeah.
detail in that meeting, and then we were realizing we were going really detailed, and they said, we don't need to do all of this right now,
Yeah,
we'll
right.
follow up with Bob.
Right.
So it seems like the next step is for them to follow up with Bob to
Right.
get the real nitty gritty
Yep.
Right.
details
Yep.
and then talk about.
Yeah.
Right, and I think they're gonna do that. I mean, they're getting this proposal in place, so. They know what they're gonna get paid.
For the first stage.
Yeah,
Right.
and then that's exactly right, yeah.
Right.
And they're taking all care of funding.
I am,
No, I mean,
They are, yeah,
they are taking care of exploring funding
yes,
sources.
and
That's-
exploring bond agents as well. as I
Yeah,
understand.
that's the word I'm
Yeah,
looking
yeah,
for. Thank you.
Yeah,
yeah, we need to follow up. I mean, I guess, yeah, I'm gonna follow up with Tom about having a next meeting. You know, I
Good.
think we should have a next meeting.
Where was one of the other town garages?
Pardon me?
Where was another town garage that was an example?
It was Patton,
Hatton?
Patton, CATON.
Okay.
but they,
So that's a little
but
closer.
they did.
Where's Cat?
It's just south of Corning, yeah. There.
Kate,
Casey.
Kate,
Oh, sorry, I'm not from there.
It's near a
Can't.
That's a-
It's like,
any hockey player knows it's Kate.
have you ever been to Bhutan?
of course,
Just take-
you just gotta go over to horse heads.
Yeah, of course, then, no, they just get rid of those.
Good night.
Oh, yeah. Night, Chiquita.
Yeah, it's right there.
Good. Was it safer time?
Yeah, so, okay, we can figure that out.
Yeah,
So, thank you, Jesse. So is there anything else? Have I forgotten anything? I think we're ready to adjourn.
my only last thing, which we don't have to do now at all, but like, are we done dealing, like addressing, speaking to the petition? Does that feel like it's been come to a resting point, or do we have more? I mean, I don't like have.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you know,
I spoke to the petition.
I understand, you know,
Are you
that,
guys even gonna vote on whether or not it's something that you'll do?
We don't know how long this is gonna take.
I think,
I think.
I mean, I think, we are in agreement. And correct me if I'm wrong, that about moving forward in a responsible way and
And ignoring the petition. So vote on it, let's.
so I made the statement last week, John, that moratorium,
Statement twice.
so,
I know
okay,
what you're saying.
so you understand it, then I won't repeat it. So I did address the points in the petition. And, you know, I understand, I have a different philosophy than you do. I think zoning has something to offer the town.
And if you're right and the town agrees, then what's the big deal?
So, there's no big deal. But so we are doing our due diligence. If we will move accordingly, we will, as Cal said, we're not going to rush this, but we're not going to slow it down. If another town board in the future thinks whatever we did or didn't do is not right, they can take action as they see fit. So,
So no vote.
This is not, I'm not here to debate.
yeah, so
I would like to
Exactly.
move that I think we're done with the business, is that correct?
well, Catherine asked the question, if we're settling the
I
petition.
think that
I would like.
I have not spoken, I mean, your statement does not reflect my views. I've just,
Okay.
right, so and that's fine, and I don't need to like have more time. I just want to say that like, if there was a question posed, which I think is a legitimate question, as to whether or not that statement reflected the board or that statement reflected one individual, and I will just say on record that it does not reflect the board, because it doesn't reflect me. So I guess that we could adjourn the meeting. I don't need
That's
to
fair.
belabor the point.
Yep. I will offer a
So should
motion.
we,
to adjourn.
Statement to the community that the
Second.
Second by Tim. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourned at 9:10. Thank you.
Cal voted no.
Oh, you voted, no. I'm sorry, Cal.
He's
Cal voted no.
So I would suggest that you guys put out a
Oh,
statement
you're
to the
opposed to
community
adjourning?
that you're not gonna do what the petition asked. Put it in writing, let people know.
I
There's
made my
150
statement,
people
John.
wanna know.
I made my statement.
I'm not here to debate this.
It's your side.
I had one of your people come to my house with that petition and tell me all kinds of stuff that wasn't true. I'm not gonna debate it, okay?
I talked to the
And the
woman that came
language
to
of
your house and
the
your
language-
story and hers are immensely different.
Well, that's pretty surprising. That's pretty
Yeah,
amazing.
it's not surprising to me either.
That's pretty amazing.